Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Sweet House. I am sitting down with history today. Corrine Tarver, who is the athletic director for Fisk University and also Fisk University's inaugural gymnastics coach. They are the first HBCU to get a gymnastics team. So I am so excited that she's here. She is so incredible, charismatic. We've been sitting here talking and she just came in with all the good energy. So I know she had the energy when she was hitting the floor back in the day, but she also has the energy sitting down for this interview. So welcome to the Sweet House.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for taking the time and welcome to Nashville. Are you enjoying Nashville so far?
Honestly, I haven't had a chance to really get to know Nashville. I've been here a year, but with me having both positions, I kind of got here the beginning of July 5th I started, and the athletes, actually the incoming freshmen and newcomers reported July 30th.
Oh, wow.
So I have been running and going, and it was basically go to home, come to work, go home, go to work. So
yeah. Well, you got to get out. We just talked behind the scenes about her going to Penn's Mechanical because you mentioned bowling. So if you guys are visiting Nashville, you can go to Penn's Mechanical too because you might catch her there. And you definitely want to get a photo with her because she is like the epitome of success. So I want to jump straight into it. In 2022, you became the inaugural coach of the Fisk University gymnastics team. And this, like I mentioned, is the first HBCU to get a gymnastics team. So how does that feel to know that you, first of all, are making history and that you're leading these efforts? Do you feel any pressure around it? How does that feel to know that you're doing this?
Humble, actually. It was kind of humbling. The pressure was more because they announced in February that they were starting a team. They hired me in March, and then after they hired me, said, by the way, we're going to compete in 2023.
Yeah.
And I realized I had 4 months to put an entire program together.
I read that. Yeah. 4 months. Is that traditional?
No.
No. Okay.
That is as far from traditional as you can get. Most programs will hire a coach, have about anywhere from 8 months to a year to get things together and then start competing the following year.
Yeah.
So by the time I actually was hired, most recruiting was done. So I was a little nervous about finding athletes. I
saw one of your recruits had already committed somewhere else and then she decommitted.
At least almost 5 or 6 of them committed to other places.
Yeah.
And either decommitted or some hadn't committed yet, but had offers out there. But when Fisk announced, a lot of the girls that are on my team right now, they started emailing because they were like, oh, an HBCU, and it's something that they wanted to do. So they started contacting this school. And then when I was hired, I kind of got, throwing a whole bunch of emails and voice messages and saying, here, have fun, go.
So how did the conversation around getting a gymnastics team at Fisk go? Because I watched one interview and one of your girls, she said she was talking to her aunt and uncle about going to Fisk and they didn't have a gymnastics team. And so she said, the only way I'll go there is if they get a gymnastics team. So do you know the ins and outs of that conversation and what exactly happened?
I do, and it was a little different than that, but not very much. One of our board of trustees, is his niece, or great niece actually, that was a gymnast, and so they were sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, and he asked, have you picked a college or are you going to school because she's graduating, and he asked if she applied to Fisk, and she said no, and he said, did you apply to any HBCUs? She said no, and he said why? And she said, because they don't have gymnastics, and I want to do gymnastics in college. So he was like, what do you mean they don't have gymnastics? And he was like, oh, that can't be true. That can't be right. So he looked into it and realized that there was not a single HBCU that had a gymnastics program. And he realized that gymnastics would be a perfect fit for Fisk. Because the type of athletes, gymnasts tend to be A-type personalities, very much into their academics, able to micromanage, or I should say multitask.
That's interesting.
Gymnastics is one of those sports where you most of these girls practice anywhere from 20 to 30 hours a week, plus going to school.
That is a full-time job.
Yeah. Some were homeschooled.
Yeah.
We had a couple that were homeschooled, but the others went to school, practiced that many hours, and had, socialized. So they know how to multitask and juggle and still have, high academics.
Yeah.
So being that he was on the board, he went to the chair and the rest of the committee, and they made a pitch, and
then they called you.
Well, February they announced, so it was from November to February, and
so they didn't have a coach yet before they announced.
No, they had talked with a couple of people consulting about the feasibility, and I don't know why someone thought it would be a great idea to say, yeah, you can start the same year, and and so that was a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of nights where I couldn't turn my brain off, and I was very stressed because I didn't know how I was going to get a team together. Knowing the significance of this year, I was very concerned about the look. Yeah. Because we couldn't come out and not be successful. We couldn't.
Absolutely, because the historical context too.
Yes.
And for those who are watching, a lot of people don't know what an HBCU is still, even though it's a hot topic and it's historical black college or university. But I just wanted to put it out there. And then you have PWIs, which are predominantly white institutions. And so I wanted to make that clarification because some listeners or watchers may not know the difference. But again, like I said, she is coming from legendary historical context. And so you've got all that on your back. And then you're talking about they gave you 4 months to pretty much prepare. And you're used to preparing at least a year or so for season, as are most sports. Most sports prepare, they're practicing way ahead of time. Like, for instance, the Titans, they have preseason. They have already started training camps and all this stuff way ahead of time. So how did you deal with the stress of knowing that you had to make this happen under those provisions?
How did I deal with the stress? You know what? I just had to keep faith that it was going to work out. Yeah. That, that I was put in the right place at the right time. That I was given, relying on what I've learned. Yeah. To just say, you know what, you just got to put your faith in things and just go out there and do it. But it definitely, I knew we could not fail. Yeah. And I needed to have a team that could be competitive, that could be, out there and not just be there. Or taking zeros because we didn't have enough athletes to put on the floor to compete. So once I got the first commit, that's when I finally breathed again.
How many were you looking for total?
I was looking for 15 for my first year, which is right around what we got. So I was very happy about that. We did take in some girls who were injured coming in, so I didn't know whether or not they would be able to compete. There were a couple that did not because of injuries still, but the sport is something that happens. It's pretty common. So 15 is a really low number for college gymnastics because of injuries. And there were definitely times where we were very tight. We only had 5 gymnasts on an event, which for anyone that doesn't know, college gymnastics, there's 6 athletes compete each event, 5 scores count. So we can always drop a low. But this season, most of the meets, we only had 5, meaning if somebody made a mistake, we had to count that mistake. Right. Oh, and that was the reason why our scores didn't reflect how talented we were.
But you guys still were able to inspire so many people.
Yes.
Literally everyone was showing up. I know there was one of your gymnastics meets here in Nashville at Belmont, and there were so many people that brought their families out just because they wanted to see you guys succeed. So Nashville was cheering for you for sure. And I think people all over the United States were cheering for you everywhere you went. And I think that's incredible in and of itself.
It was amazing. Every meet we went to, they either had a record crowd or, almost every meet, a record crowd or the largest crowd they had, or, when we went to Georgia, they had a sellout for the first time in a couple of years. And people some of the people that went were not gymnastics fans. Like they'd never been to a gymnastics meet.
Yeah.
But they heard about an HBCU gymnastics team and just wanted to be a part of history.
Absolutely. Wanted to be a part of history. But then also, I think even for the Olympics, like gymnastics is like the sport we all want to see. Right. I'm like, now we all love to see the rest of it, but gymnastics is like what we're all watching. And we may not watch gymnastics any other time, but like that is the thing that we want to see, because you guys are doing just something that we can't even fathom doing. Like, I don't even know how you do all these flips and all this extra stuff, and like how, but you saying that it takes a type A personality and a certain kind of person to be able to get into that sport makes sense, because yeah, it ain't for me.
It definitely is it's a rush, you know, and but like I said, these girls practice anywhere from 20 to 30 hours a week, and that's what it takes.
Yeah. You know? And which is a full-time job. So it takes the commitment of a full-time job to get out there and make that happen. For you're not even on the floor for how long? How long are they typically out there?
Beam and bars, the max is, beam and floor, the max is 1:30. Bars usually about 30 to 45 seconds, and vault is obviously 10 seconds down the runway. So,
and that speaks to the commitment of it all too. So I wanted to ask you how you got into gymnastics, and I just want to hear all about your journey of gymnastics. Did you start when you were like 2 years old, or what was this like?
I was a late bloomer. I started in dance school doing acrobatics. You know, like you can kind of see dance moms at acrobatic routines, and then my sister was a cheerleader. Okay. And there was a small program in our town that did gymnastics, and she wanted to do some gymnastics. She liked it, but she also wanted to help with tumbling for cheerleading. Yeah. And me being, you know, I was 10 years younger than her, but
Were you a natural athlete?
I was.
Okay.
I was definitely. I started there, but that was like the kind of gym where we rolled the equipment in and pushed it out. It was in the bottom of a church, very small, not very serious, but they still had competitions, but it was fun. It wasn't what you see training for the Olympics. It was, you know, like some of the women that competed were in their 50s and 40s. What? Yeah, it was the old school gymnastics. The bars were just like men's P bars that they put one side up higher than the other. Yeah. They weren't actual uneven bars. So I did that for a little while, and then I went on to a Y, and even there it was pull the equipment in, pull it out. Did that for a little bit, and then the coach there said, you know what, we've taken her as far as we can. She needs to go to a more dedicated program. By the time I did that, I was actually in 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
But
is that traditional for gymnasts? Okay.
No, so what the equivalent of what we have now is level 10, which is the equivalent of that. I kind of moved quickly through to what would be level 10, but most of the time you're going to get there when you're 13, 14, like a lot of athletes we have. Now I was 14. Actually, I was 14 when I would have been the equivalent of that. But I didn't go through like the whole levels like others did. I just kind of, when I got to a real gym, I just blossomed, and you know, I was. So
you're naturally inclined.
And I was that kid that would do anything. My coach would be like, okay, today we're going to try this. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Let's do it, yeah.
And I'd be the first in line, and, you know, my teammates would be nervous or scared or not go for it or hold back, which is very common in the sport. Yeah. It's a scary sport.
I did cheerleading my entire life, and then when I was doing tumbling, and I was like, I'm good. I'm not interested. So, yeah, there's some things that are just, the fear takes over, for sure.
But I didn't have that fear. Yeah. I had no fear. And my coach would be like...
Well, that's why you're in the position you're in now, because you have no fear. And you can clearly come in and start a whole gymnastics team at an HBCU. No problem. She's got this.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, as a gymnast, it came pretty easy as far as naturally understanding. Like, I didn't have to have a lot of drills or a lot of lead up to understand what to do. I just kind of was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Or, you know, I could watch what someone else did and see how they did it and then be like, okay, so I need to make sure I do it this way or my body does this. So
Is that the best way you learn gymnastics?
No, most are drills. Most people, I mean, I have a lot of athletes when I'll say things to them like, well, do you see the beam before you land on it? And they'll look at me and go, no. And I'm like, okay, so if I asked you to walk across this beam with your eyes closed, would you? And they're like, no. Like, why not? Oh, because I'd fall. I might hurt myself. But you'll flip with your eyes closed. And then they look at me and they give me this look like light bulb just went off.
Yeah.
But it's not natural to them.
Yeah.
To me, I was always that. I never had to be told, look where you're trying to, like, find the beam, look where you're going, that kind of thing. It was just a very natural thing to me. So it made it easier to learn because I wasn't afraid of the dark, I guess you could say. You know, I mean, if you don't know where you are, the ground is, the ceiling is, the equipment is, you don't know when you're going to hit it or where you're going to hit it, then you're going to be terrified.
Yeah. So is it just like an energy feeling that what does it feel like to be doing that?
Honestly, it's a natural feeling. Like I naturally looked for my equipment. I naturally looked to see where I was trying to land. And that prevented me from getting hurt too, a lot of times, because I was prepared. I knew where the ground was. I knew how to absorb my landings or how to, keep myself from getting hurt. I realized, okay, I need to get further away from the beam or get closer to, like, whatever the case may be. It's very rare for me to have crashed. Yeah. And if I did crash, that was like, okay, I'm not doing this skill anymore.
Yeah. No, I completely
once I started crashing
that.
Like that, if I didn't know where I was, I would look at my coach and be like, next skill.
So at 14 or around 14 and you're in 8th grade and the coach at the YMCA says...
I was 12 at the Y. Okay. I went to the other gym when I was 13.
Okay, so you're at the other gym. Did you have any sort of imposter syndrome going from kind of not as a rigorous schedule and program, and then you stepped into this new gym and it's a whole new environment? Did you have any imposter syndrome, or were you fearless there too?
No. Honestly, no.
Okay.
I've always kept sight of the fact that why I was there. And, with my parents, I mean, we were middle class, but it was still a struggle. I mean, they gave up
Gymnastics
a lot.
is expensive. Very expensive. Yeah, as are most sports.
And I went from training 9 hours a week to training 20 hours a week. And the price tag skyrocketed. And my parents were more than willing to do it. But I understood that we gave up a lot for me to do that. Right. And the gym I went to is in Stamford, Connecticut, which is Fairfield County, which is one of the richest counties in the United States. Okay. It's right outside of New York City. Yeah. And so a lot of people that I did gymnastics with had a lot of money.
Very wealthy.
I mean, I actually worked there, and I had guys that played for the Knicks. I had their daughters on my team. I had... I think it was Tommy Hilfiger's daughter was going to the gym at one point in time.
Oh, wow.
So when I say that these are people, like it was mommy and me classes were nanny and me classes, not mommy and me classes. Yeah. So, so it was different. Like, what for them, it was a drop in the bucket to pay for their kids' gymnastics. For me, it was definitely a sacrifice. Yeah. So I never lost sight of that. So the other stuff was just it was stuff. Yeah. It was white noise. It was, as long as you stay out of my way and stay out of my gymnastics, then we're good.
Yeah. Like I'm here to do gymnastics, and you were committed to it. And you were a natural, so
like I said, because I was always the first to be like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And my coach was like, okay, Corrine, let's go. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Yeah.
So did you ever encounter any challenges when you were training, when you went from a few hours a week to this new rigorous schedule?
What do you mean?
With school and like balancing everything that you were doing, because you're still young, you're an adolescent at this time. And I think that time is when everyone's trying to figure out just a lot. You're trying to figure out high school, you're trying to figure out sports, you're trying to balance extracurricular activities. And on top of what's next for you, are you going to college? How did you balance it all?
You know what? I didn't take on the stress like that. That wasn't how my brain worked. School for me it's not that it was easy, but it was like, okay, I need to do that. I'm not kind of that semi A-type personality. That I'm not a full A-type, but I'm semi A. Like I was like, okay. A-type. I'm not someone that, like, if I don't get it done, I start stressing out kind of thing. It was, okay, so what do I have to do now? Okay, let's get it done. So I'm someone that works well under pressure, but I also I'm fine with things being thrown at me to some extent. To some extent. I'm okay with surprises. I'm not okay with unnecessary surprises, I guess you can say. But, I actually had to take the train every day to practice. So I would take a train from New York to Connecticut.
By yourself?
By myself.
Oh, okay.
And I was 13 years old. I used to sit in the front of the train next to the conductor. And they all knew me. Every conductor knew who I was. So they would kind of keep an eye on me.
Yeah.
And make sure there was no one getting too close to where I was. But and then I would walk to the bus and take the bus to my stop to get to practice every day.
Yeah.
It was also way in the 80s, so it wasn't quite as bad then as it is today. But no, I would never let my own child do that. But I had time on the train, so I'd do homework. And then when I get home, I would eat, take a shower, do homework, and then move on from there.
So were you in school or were you doing homeschooling?
I was in school.
Okay.
But I got out of school every day at 1:00.
Okay.
So
how'd you do that?
I would just go straight classes. I didn't do lunch. I didn't do any extra. So I didn't have to do gym. I didn't have to do study halls or any other ancillary class, except I did have to take art and music, history as a graduation requirement. But I literally just went straight classes and then left.
Okay, so your school was aware that you were doing gymnastics, and so your schedule just worked together.
I mean, I missed a lot of school, so they had to. I missed about 30 days of school a year.
That's why I wanted to ask you these questions, because I think a lot of times when we talk about the rigorous schedule of gymnasts, we don't talk about what the work-life balance looks like, because it is work, essentially. And then you still have your life. And for gymnasts, they start training so early, because how old are they usually how old are you guys when you attempt to get on Olympics teams? They're fairly young. These are not
as much now. It used to be. Nowadays, if you probably look at the average age from the last Olympics, I think it was 18 or 19. So it was a little bit older.
Yeah.
But a lot of these athletes, that if you look at, how long they've been doing the sport, they had started training the rigorous hours when they were probably 10 or so.
Yeah, and that's a lot it's an adjustment for a 10-year-old to go, commit themselves to that, but they do love it. So
that's why we do it. We love it. I mean, for me, that was my happy place. The gym was my happy place. There were days, and people don't believe me on that, I would be like, I would go to practice and be fine, and then as soon as I walked out the door, I would look like I was a dead person walking, and I had double ear infection and strep throat. But I'd be at practice for 5 hours and be absolutely fine when I was there.
And that is the true athlete in you, though.
But that was my happy place. That was where I could put everything else aside, because I was in control. And it was also, like I said, it's kind of the one place that I was 100% in control of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Gymnastics, it's me. It's me against myself or me against the equipment to get it done, to get better, to overcome, if there was a fear there, or to overcome I'm not making this, I got to figure it out kind of thing.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for parents or young athletes that are wanting to get into gymnastics?
Honestly, I think every single parent should put their child in gymnastics at some point in time. Most will never be gymnasts. It's just the kind of sport. Either you can do it or you can't. It's not really it's not really the kind of sport where you can be like, oh, any kid can do gymnastics.
Yeah.
No, any kid could try. Yeah. But I think everyone should put them in, because it teaches good fundamentals. Yeah. That they will learn for other sports. And so.
In what way? Which fundamentals?
It can teach them how to stretch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sounds crazy, but you would be amazed how many times I've had football or basketball players, even track athletes, would be like, can you teach me how to stretch? Yeah. Can you show me how to stretch? I had coaches that would have us come in sometimes to teach their athletes how to stretch properly. It teaches them how to tuck and roll. So if you start to fall, not to put your hand out so that they don't break the arm or break wrists or
I didn't even think about that, like the physical fundamentals.
We teach them how to tuck and roll, bringing your arms in and just, and burying your head so you don't, you can reduce the chance of a concussion or broken arms or dislocations. It teaches them how to be comfortable upside down, which is something that a lot of, you would be amazed how many kids have a really hard time with that. We'll have kids at classes and the forward roll would freak them out because they don't understand that upside down.
Oh no, I get it. I do yoga at least 4 to 5 times a week, and some moves I'm still working on. And honestly, I wasn't scared of them as a kid, but for some reason, there's this period of my life where I wasn't doing a lot of that, and now I'm trying to get back into it, doing handstands and all this stuff, and I'm like, I just like something about it turning over, just it gets me every time. I'm like, I got to let go of my fear.
But it also teaches them to be fearless or overcome fear. I mean, something as basic as walking across a 4-inch beam at a height for young kids to be able to do that without being afraid to do it and holding anyone's hand. It's a huge accomplishment for them.
Are you afraid of heights? I'm curious.
I am, but
surprisingly,
yes, but not. It's a weird fear. I have like this weirdly weird fear. Okay, so I have a very huge fear of bridges too.
Really?
I'm terrified of bridges.
Like if you're driving across a bridge? Really? I have another friend that said that. Terrified. She said she holds her breath.
The reason I'm afraid is because when I am on a bridge and it's like heights, I always feel like if I look at the water, I'm going to drive off into the water.
Oh my God.
That if I look at it, my body will follow my eyes and the car is just I'm just going to drive it right off the edge of the bridge into the water.
Yeah.
And it's completely irrational.
Fears are irrational.
But that is my fear with heights, is that I'm afraid that I'm going to step off the edge and jump off the side. It's not the height itself.
It's just the fact that it's right there.
The thought that I might fall over the edge and go off
is scary.
And go off it.
Yeah.
And it's weird because, you know, like I can be up in a plane, it doesn't bother me. I could if I'm in a harness, I can go as high as you put me. I had no problem. If I know that I'm not going to fall, the fear of the height would go away. It's the thought that I'm going to not fall over the edge, but jump over the edge. Like I have to like tell myself, don't jump.
Yeah.
Or don't drive in the water. Like I'm literally saying that as I drive over a bridge.
Wow.
Don't drive in the water. Don't drive into the bridge. Don't drive off the bridge.
Wow. It's
irrational
fears.
It's completely irrational.
But everyone has irrational fears.
Yes.
So it's interesting. Like, I went to the Sky Deck when I was in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been, but you can like walk out in this glass deck, and it looked cool in photos. And then I got up there and I was like, I am not walking out there. I was like, and it's completely safe. I'm pretty sure.
Like, closed?
Yeah, it's closed in.
If I'm closed, I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
I'd be 100% okay if I know that I can't go off, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's just, you know.
It's scary though. Yeah. I mean, I don't really do heights very well. I'm fine in a plane, but like you said, if it's open space, it's just something about it just gets me. But even with that being glassed in, I was like, like I literally put a toe out there and I was like, okay, I'm coming back. And then I'm looking at all these other people and they're sitting down on the glass and like looking out over Chicago. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. This ain't for me. I'll take my pictures inside actually. But UGA recruited you from your program. And how was recruitment for you going to college? Did you have a lot of schools looking at you? Or?
I did not. But what happened was they had me down the wrong year.
Okay.
So most schools thought I was not recruitable.
Yeah.
I was not recruiting age.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't get any calls for a while. And I was surprised because at that time I was on the U.S. national team. So everyone knew who I was because, you know, like every college knows the national team members.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend that went to Nebraska and she went to her coach and was like, why aren't you recruiting Corrine? Yeah. And he was like, oh, because she's not recruitable. And he's like, yes, she is. So Nebraska started recruiting me. They were the only ones.
Yeah.
And so I went to visit and I was like, okay, I'm going to Nebraska. And I went to a competition soon after that. And my coach and the head coach at Georgia were talking. Yeah. And she said something to the effect of, too bad she's only a junior in high school. And he goes, she's graduating. She's a senior.
So they had your year mixed up. Who had your year mixed up?
There's like I don't know. Back then there was some kind of
or something.
Some kind of something that coaches. I don't know how it happened, honestly. I just know that for some reason people thought that I was not that I was a junior in high school instead of a senior. And
right.
back then you couldn't recruit juniors. Now you can.
Yeah.
You couldn't back then. So once Georgia found out that I was actually recruitable, I started getting calls from them, and I went to visit, and I was there for the Alabama meet, which Georgia, Alabama back in the day was a major rivalry. It's a big rivalry. Rivalry. Fun word. Fun word. Rivalry. But once I went to Georgia, then people were like, wait a minute. And then I started getting a lot of phone calls. But by then I was like, oh, you're too late. I loved it. And so
too bad. She's taken.
I committed to Georgia. And that was that. That was history. I didn't even, and honestly, I found out after I went there, I was the first Black gymnast to go to Georgia.
Really?
It didn't even occur to me because my friend at Nebraska was a Black gymnast.
Okay.
So I just thought, of course there are Black gymnasts all over the place. Why wouldn't we? And no.
Yeah. Well, there weren't a lot when I was doing cheerleading. Whenever I would go to the gymnastics gym or dance, that's just typical of these programs too, partly economically because it's expensive for a lot of African-American Black families to be a part of these sports. So yeah, but I think it's really cool that you were able to go to UGA under those stipulations as the first Black gymnast. And then you went on and you were the first African-American woman to win the NCAA All-Around Gymnastics Championship. So all those schools that were then recruiting you or then looking at you probably regretted their decision, or not regretted their decision, but they just missed out on not getting you because you went on to make this record. How did that feel?
That was cool. That was, and I actually...
Did you feel like a history maker when you were doing all these things? Did you feel...
No, because I didn't know that I was the first Black gymnast to win the all-around either until someone told me.
I feel like it's just so interesting to me because I read these history books to my daughter. She's 19 months. And I'm just, you read about all these incredible people, and you're one of those incredible people as one of the first gymnasts, African-American gymnasts to do this. And it's just really cool. So I often wonder, how does that feel on the inside? Do you even recognize that you're iconic or?
Not at the time.
Not at the time.
No.
Do you now?
Oh, well, yeah. No.
Yeah.
And, I understood it, but I, like when you're 19, 20 years old, you're just like, oh, that's cool. Because it honestly, you see the publicity or the interview here now talking about it. When I was doing it at the time, I didn't have a ton of interviews. You know what I mean? I was interviewed after the meet.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I just won.
Yeah.
But anyone who had won would have been interviewed after the meet. It wasn't that I was interviewed because I was the first Black gymnast to do it.
So they didn't make a big charade about it then?
Not really. I got a question or two, and that's when I realized that I was. But honestly, my goal was to be the first UGA gymnast to win the all-around.
Right.
It wasn't to be the first Black gymnast because I thought it had already happened.
Yeah. You weren't paying attention to that.
Well, I just assumed it. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
because we deserve it. Yeah.
And I don't know. I had a really good friend that went to UCLA, and she had won the floor exercise title. She and I were back and forth. We came in the same time, and it was like one of those things where our freshman year, I went in first place into finals. She ended up winning. My sophomore year, I was injured, so I still finished second, and then our junior, we tied for the championships. But, I'm watching her be a national champion. I'm watching other friends that I knew that were Black gymnasts who were being successful. So I didn't really...
put two and two together that you would be.
Yeah, I kind of just assumed that there'd already been a Black gymnast somewhere in the history. It wasn't that it was made a big deal. It was more of a big deal that I was the first UGA gymnast to win.
So as the Fisk coach, do you feel some sort of iconic movement happening within yourself and within your girls?
It's kind of full circle.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really amazing when we went to Georgia. We competed at Georgia last year.
Yeah.
And to bring a team, an HBCU team,
back home to your alma mater.
And I told him, I said, I was in tears. I was like, you guys get to compete on the same floor I did.
Yeah.
You get to compete in the same space where I made history, because when I won the all-around, it was at Georgia. We were hosting NCAAs.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, you were in the same building that I won an NCAA championship in. And I get to share that with them.
Yeah.
I felt, I mean, it was incredible, that
Were
feeling.
you all crying? Because you're going to make me cry.
I was. I mean, I was trying real hard not to, because it was crazy. I was mic'd up, and I was, you know, cameras were following and stuff. So I was trying real hard not to mess up my makeup. Because I'm like, I'm on camera. I cannot have, you know, streaks or raccoon eyes or craziness.
I just came to coach. I didn't come to cry.
Well, no, I knew I would. Our volunteer coach, our choreographer, was my choreographer at Georgia.
Yeah.
And he had 10 national championship rings that were part of being a part of the UGA program. So for him and I both, we were both in tears, because, you know, together we won an NCAA title, and, you know, and won a floor exercise title. And then here we are bringing this team to compete on the same floor as the rest of us. And then they did a nice montage at the beginning and all this other stuff. So of course that's nostalgic. You're going back and you're seeing yourself on the big screen, and it was a sellout crowd. I mean, they were.
Did people travel from Nashville? A lot of Fisk, a lot of the Fisk community?
A lot of Fisk from Nashville. We had a lot of Fisk alum from Atlanta. Okay. There's a big chapter in the Atlanta area. So I think they had 2 buses.
Oh, wow.
That they bought up, and then there were people who
that alumni
drove
base
themselves.
is a strong alumni base for sure.
It is. And it was. We went to almost every meet that we went to that was in a major city. The alumni did something for us. And it was so amazing to meet all these wonderful people. And it was great for our athletes to see what they are doing. Yeah. So the type of jobs that they had, but also to make that networking connection. So now if they want to go to DC and work in politics or in one of the agencies, there's Fisk alum there. And for many, they've met these girls.
Yeah. So. One of the guys that I had on season 1 of the Sweet House, he went to Fisk, and he's a Broadway star now. Is he? He's on the Temptations, and he's just, Fisk is just all around. I'd known that. Yeah. I mean, it seems like the graduates of Fisk are going on to do incredible things on the big stages in all sorts of different fields.
So you must have been a Jubilee singer?
I was not a Jubilee. Was he a Jubilee singer? He was a Jubilee singer, actually. Yeah. He had so much stuff under his umbrella. He's like been on several Broadway shows. He's incredible. You got to go back and watch that interview, because he was great to talk to too.
I wish we'd have known that, because we were in New York. Yeah. Because we went to compete at Rutgers. Yeah. And so we went into the city, and we were actually, we went to see MJ. Yeah. And went to a beautiful restaurant right across the street from the Marquise. Yeah. Or one, Marquise is a couple of blocks, but it was this amazing restaurant, and they did this great menu kind of thing for us. But we got a chance to go to a Broadway play, and for many of my girls, they had never been to New York City, so it was like a new thing for them to be able to do that.
So, are you from the city, or are you from right outside the city?
I'm from outside Mount Vernon.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's the suburbs, but I could walk to the Bronx from my house. I mean, might take 20, 30 minutes, but I could walk.
So what was that like coming from New York down south to Georgia? Was that culture shock, or how did that feel?
Well, okay, so I'm from New York, and Mount Vernon is 4 square miles, but there's a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, there's a football team, and I've been to a football game, a high school game. We had maybe 500 people in the stands. My first Georgia football game, and there's 85,000 people there. Oh, yeah. And I just remember looking up going, wow. They're barking. What did I get myself? They were literally barking.
Welcome to football country down south.
Yeah, but I didn't, I'd heard the Go Dog Sick'em cheer, but you hear it. And my recruiting trip was during a gymnastics meet, not a football or basketball. So there was like 500 people in the stands when I was recruited. It wasn't a lot of people. Yeah. And so and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then you get 85,000 people barking, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Oh my gosh. But it only took about another, half of a football game that I'm sitting there barking along with them. So,
and now you can't help but bark because now you're alumni. Well, you are like historical award-winning alumni. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was treated very differently than a lot of the, Black students on campus. I had that celebrity status. So I could kind of integrate easier. There's definitely...
The athletes always get the praise.
They do. Yeah, we do. But I was also... myself and the other person that came in with me had been in the Olympics for Canada. So we were two of the highest recruits they had, other than one, Lucy Weiner, who came before us, had been on the Olympics team for US as well. So we were getting a ton of publicity. Yeah. And so we were very, very well known before we even really competed.
So you were a popular kid.
Well, it just made it easier to be able to
navigate the space.
Integrate, because I was the only Black gymnast on the team. So if I wanted to hang out with my teammates, I'm going to white parties and I'm going to frat houses or sorority houses, which didn't last long. That was a very uncomfortable feeling. I'm not going to lie.
Going to the sorority houses.
Well,
did
the
you
fraternity houses. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. What did you pledge?
What would you guess if you had to guess?
I don't want to guess.
An AKA.
Me too. Oh, hey, Sora. I knew I loved you for a reason. Oh, my gosh. So you pledged at UGA?
Yes, I did.
I love that. I've had 2 AKs on the show. I didn't know they were AKs either. So, yeah, that's awesome. The sisterhood is strong. You guys, AK, we've been around for over 100 years. Black sorority. We were the first and the finest.
Yes.
I actually got into it with this lady on the plane. She were all the Deltas were headed to Indianapolis this past weekend. And she goes, "Are you headed to Indianapolis?" I said, "Absolutely not."
Well, you want to hear great. I was heading to Michigan last weekend, but my layover was in Chicago, and all I could do is, I'm like, you see a Sarah, you're like, "Hey, Sarah, hey, Sarah." I was like, "Sarah."
Yeah.
They had a convention going on in Chicago.
Yeah.
So they were all coming into town, into the airport, and I was like,
"Yep."
Actually, no, I wasn't. I'm sorry, it wasn't. Was it Chicago? Yeah, it was Chicago.
Yeah.
It was Chicago.
Well, I think they had they just came out with the first credit union.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and that's probably what was going on. All the sorors were going there.
It may have been for that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of amazing. But, at Georgia, in the 80s, it was pretty separate. Like you would never find a black student in a white fraternity sorority.
It's still that way, I feel like, to a certain... I mean, I graduated in 2011 from University of Memphis, and I have one white line sister, but as far as Black women joining white sororities, it's not a common thing now either.
Well, or fraternities. And it actually didn't... They wouldn't let it happen. I had a friend who was blackballed on the very last day, and it was because he was too dark, and he wasn't black.
So he was black trying to get into...
No, he was not black.
Okay.
He was Filipino.
Okay. Filipino trying to get into a white sorority, or white fraternity. Yeah.
So, I learned that, but I didn't know, like, I didn't feel that when I went to like a fraternity party, when I first got there, I felt a little uncomfortable being like literally having hundreds of people there at a party, because a lot of times they were outside of concerts or whatever, and they'd be on the lawn and be the only black person there. I've never had an issue with being the only black person in a room, but that felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just
in what way did it make you feel uncomfortable?
Like I wasn't supposed to be there. That was like one of the first times that I ever really felt like I really shouldn't be here.
Do you feel like that was just the difference between living as a black person amidst white audiences in New York and then coming to the South, and it's just different?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of it. And, and it wasn't that anybody did anything or tried anything, but the looks,
it's just the assimilation is different here.
And that vibe you get, like, even though people may not say it, you get that when people don't want you there. And that has nothing to do with color, but if people don't want you someplace, you can feel that.
Yeah. The energy is different.
And so I think I went to 2, and then I said,
Is UGA, what do you know the percentage of black students versus?
Oh, it was, I want to say it was maybe maybe 20%.
And see, University of Memphis is like 50% Black. And so even though it's a PWI, it still has a vast amount of Black people, and then it's in a fairly large percentage of Black people in the city too. And so us going to school there, I call University of Memphis the most diverse school in the United States, period, because you get everybody. I mean, we had literally everybody. And it's just, they do such an incredible job being inclusive of everybody. So we did stuff with the white sororities and fraternities and vice versa. So everybody goes to everybody's parties. So there was never a party where it didn't look like everybody was there.
Yeah, no,
and even our yard shows, they all came to our yard shows. The MPHC all came to our yard shows, and
it was very different there. It was that did not happen at Georgia, at least not.
And that
back
doesn't
then.
happen at most PWIs in the South. And so I actually lived in DC for a little bit, and I was interning for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And I remember going, and that was another reason why I explained the difference between an HBCU and a PWI, because when I went to DC, they were all like, where are you going to school? And I was like, University of Memphis. And they go, oh, you go to a PWI? And I said, what's a PWI? Because as far as I was concerned, I went to Memphis, and Memphis is everybody.
I didn't know what that was either.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either. So that's why I explained to people, because a lot of people, as common as the term HBCU is and PWI is, or PWI somewhat is, people still don't really understand the difference. So that's why I feel the need to clarify it. And then also, University of Memphis had just such a unique spin, for sure, as far as like being able to go there and be immersed with everybody. But yeah, it was interesting because most of them that I interned with went to HBCUs. And so when I came from Memphis, they were like, but you go to a PWI. I was like, not quite. It's
I mean, technically.
Yeah, technically, but yeah.
Yeah, no, Georgia was definitely not. We at least not at the time. We definitely had our separation. There was Black parties, there was white parties. And I had to get integrated into the Black community at Georgia because, the dorm I lived in, there, other than the RA that I knew, we didn't have very many Black in the dorm, other than athletes, students.
Yeah.
There wasn't really that easy opportunity for me to meet other Black students.
Right. And then how long were you training then? Was it still like 30, 40 hours?
No, there was a requirement that you could only train for 20. Well, we trained about 20 hours a week.
Okay.
They have kind of restrictions, but
yeah.
And my coach was very good about wanting us to have that balance of being able to have a social life, classes, and be serious about practice. So as long as we got the job done in the gym, she was really good about it. Like she would give us time off for spring break sometimes, because we competed through our spring break.
Yeah.
So, but if we did well and we didn't have a meet coming up, and as long as we did well, she'd give us time off. So,
So how did you pledge, go to school, and also do gymnastics?
Well, as it turned out, I pledged after season was over. We were on quarters at the time.
Okay.
Instead of semesters. So NCAAs were in April. And so the line came out after.
Okay.
So it wasn't really an issue because I was already done.
Yeah.
But it was also right after I won.
Yeah.
So my coach pretty much was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. You
Yeah.
can run all around.
You're free now. You just made history for UGA.
Yeah.
That's all we needed.
Go for it.
Yeah. Now you can go do AK.
Because I thought I was going to have the line was going to be in the fall. And so I'd asked permission to do that. She said, okay, as long as it doesn't interfere. But then they end up having the line spring. So it actually worked out perfect.
Yeah, that did work out perfect for you. I'm glad you're a source. It's good to know. So you are also the athletics director right now for Fisk.
Yes.
And you're also the head gymnastics coach. So I'm just curious what a day in the life looks like, because you're used to managing rigorous schedules, but what's a day in the life look like, and where do you foresee all of it going?
Honestly, it depends on the time of year. This past year in the fall semester, most of my time was dedicated towards the AD side of my job, just trying to get things into place and meetings and, more meetings and more meetings. But during the spring semester when we were in season, my time was dedicated for gymnastics. So honestly, it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And I told the administration it wasn't fair to either side because both sides needed a fully dedicated person to elevate us and to take us to the next place. That we needed someone full-time as an AD and full-time as a gymnastics coach. So I will be giving up the AD title this coming year. So
what's it like to give up such a high accolade?
Actually, I'm okay with it because the stress last year of trying to do both. I look at it that way, and I also know that the opportunity will come again if it's meant to be. Yeah. So, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, I agree. If it's meant to happen, it'll happen. But right now, your role is to be a torchbearer for Fisk Gymnastics.
It is.
So where do you foresee the team going next? Because this year they had a pretty incredible year too, as the first inaugural year. So what's going to happen this spring? Or next spring 2024.
Yes. Well, this past year, one of the main things I told my team is don't pay attention to scores. Don't worry about what our scores look like. Don't worry about what your scores look like. We had such a young team, and college gymnastics is completely different than the club gymnastics world they came from. Most of them, you compete once every 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe you compete 6 times a year. We compete every weekend, sometimes twice in a weekend. Yeah. We had a week where we competed 3 times in a 9-day period because of when it fell, whether it's on a Friday. We had like a Friday, Sunday, Friday. And so learning how to manage that, manage your body, manage your academics, manage your mental, manage your, just your gymnastics is a growing, but usually you have upperclassmen to help the underclassmen along. And then usually, if they're not ready to compete the first year, you're okay. We didn't have that luxury. Everyone was thrown into fire, and I put them in big meets. Yeah. So I didn't want them to worry about that. I wanted them to grow. I wanted them to learn every meet, to get better every meet, to learn how to manage their time and manage their bodies, manage their gymnastics. Yeah. And the growth was incredible. Yeah. I had someone that went to the first meet of the year and the last meet. They didn't go to anything in the middle, just the first and the last. And they came to me and said, the difference in your team is night and day. Yeah. Just looking at them. The way they held themselves, the way they, carried themselves, the confidence they carried themselves with. So I went, mission accomplished.
So a majority freshmen they're going to be sophomores.
Last year was a majority freshman. Okay. Or some of them took gap years, so they weren't technically freshmen, but gymnastically they were. Yeah. Okay. This year we'll have 24 on the team.
Oh, 24. So you went from 15 to 24.
Yes. So we're bringing in, and none of them have competed in college before. So they're going to be new. So the upperclassmen will now help them along. Yeah. But this year goals, I'm going to set, goals for our scores. Yeah. And I don't know that yet, obviously, until I see everyone coming in and I get a good look at the team when we start practicing. I won't be able to give an actual goal, but we're going to have goals and say, okay, we want to score 193 or 194 or 195. And we want to, improve our ranking by however many places and that kind of thing. So people can look forward to seeing some really great gymnastics. We have more depth, so we can rest people. We can, if we have injuries, we can have people that we can slot in if we have injuries, which last year we did not. Thankfully. We were pulling people who don't usually do events and being like, okay, let's put together a routine. And we had an athlete that put together a routine in a week, and she hadn't touched the event in like a couple of months. Wow. And we're like, okay, can you figure out how to get a routine so we don't have to count a zero? Yeah. And she did a great job with it. So,
well, they're all going viral. All your girls are going viral on social media. Do you have any stipulations around what they can do on social media?
Well, yes, but mainly because they want NIL deals. And so that's going to put stipulations on them because most NIL deals are predicated upon their social media. So they have to keep it clean.
Yeah, for sure. So do you have those conversations with them about keeping their social media clean?
I have. Most of them I'm friends with with them on their social media pages. So
so they don't mind you scoping what they're doing.
They're fine with it. I mean, I like them. You like stuff all the time, and they honestly they want NIL deals. That's their goal. So they know that they have to keep putting stuff out there.
Yeah, keep putting stuff out there, and then also maintaining just a clean brand in general, because that's how you're going to continue to make that money. I love that they're able to make the money now. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I do think that I had this is an argument I had with my husband, because I did administration for 10 years before. That's one of the reasons I got the AD job. I did athletic administration for 10 years, and I actually ran an athletic department. I wasn't the AD, but I ran the day-to-day operations. But I think the athletes should get paid, but I also think that it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because now you're starting to see athletes transfer because they can get a better NIL deal at this school than they can at that school. You got schools that are not supposed to, but they are setting up NIL deals for athletes.
Wow. Before they even get there in some instances.
Honestly, all that is what was happening before when you had alumni that were paying these athletes or paying their parents or buying them a car. And these are all stuff that we went through, and the NCAA, they had to put down a lot of rules because people complained that it wasn't fair. The bigger schools were paying these kids, and so everyone wanted rules. And then when they did the rules, now it's like the athletes kind of got the shaft in that. And so I believe that they should be paid. I believe that if you're going to make millions of dollars because of these athletes, then they should get a share. But I also understand that it is a nightmare to police and to keep it fair. And then, you start going into that realm of gambling, or, you start bringing in people who we don't want to be involved in sports. And so I think that it opens up a floodgate. But it's one of those things where it's like, once you open it a little bit, it's going to open all the way. You can't. There's no way of controlling it and keeping the floodgates kind of only partially open. So.
Absolutely. So the logistics over time definitely need to be examined closely.
Well, they're already the transfer portal is so overwhelmed that I think at one point in time they closed it down because there were too many athletes in the transfer portal.
Wow.
I want to say it may have been basketball or football, one of the two, or maybe even both. But they said that the portal was so overwhelmed with athletes, and they weren't leaving because they didn't like the school necessarily, or they didn't like the coach. It was, I can get a better NIL deal. I mean, there were those that were leaving for those reasons, obviously.
Right, yeah.
That, just not happy, whatever the case. But it
became about their careers as far career stuff.
Yeah, and again, do they deserve to do that? Yes. That's free agency. I mean, that's what you see in professional sports. Free agency. Go where you can get the best deal. And I'm not gonna begrudge anyone going where they get the best deal. At the same time, there's no loyalty to it. Like, the difference is, our loyalty to our school that you don't find as much. They don't come in feeling loyal to the school. They come in feeling like this is a business deal. And I can get a better business deal over here. And so it's a different mindset.
But I also feel like in your case, your girls are choosing Fisk.
Yes.
Because they look at it as more than a business deal. They look at it from the historical context.
And I will say gymnastics hasn't really, as a whole, we haven't fallen into the whole business deal thing. Because while there is one gymnast that makes $1 million, overall gymnasts they're not going to be our top money getters. You know what I mean? They'll get a good amount, and they'll be able to be comfortable, but it's not your NIL deals are usually not predicated for gymnasts on where you go to school.
Right. That makes sense.
It's predicated on who you are. Now, does that mean that the Fisk gymnasts aren't benefiting from being at Fisk? They are.
Yeah, they are for sure.
But the PWIs, does it mean that if you go to UCLA versus LSU, you're going to get more money? No. It's who you are and whether you can, because the highest, wage earner for NLI goes to LSU.
Right.
And that's not exactly your booming metropolis.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's a different mindset, and you have gymnasts that transfer all the time, but it's it's not the same, at least not yet, as it is like a football and men's basketball, and even women's basketball starting to get into that.
Yeah, women's basketball is really heating up for sure.
And so as a coach, it's really hard too, because it's a trickle down. Like most coaches are keeping their job because they win. Well, it's hard to win if you can't keep your athletes, because how do you build a program if you're losing athletes because this school over here is going to give them, is going to come in with, I can get you this money, or, or some sponsor says, I'll give you this money, but you have to go to this school.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's a different animal.
But it's a discussion that needs to continue to be had, in my opinion.
And I believe it's going to be had, because from my understanding, it was kind of brought up in front of Congress, or it's something that I think that Washington has now taken a look at, and they may end up somehow getting involved in it. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I know that the conversations
Well, it could also entice the college students to just, not even focus on college and go towards money versus...
Well, that's what they're doing anyways.
Yeah.
But now they can do that and get college, because before they would leave school, I think some people thought maybe they wouldn't leave school early if they're already making money. But I don't think that that's changing anything, because even what you're making in college is not going to be what you're going to get in the leagues.
Right.
But
absolutely.
What I do love is that athletes that aren't going to make it in the league still get paid.
Yeah.
So I love that about it.
I love that about it too. And then also the opportunity, because traditional jobs don't necessarily pay what the NIL deals are paying people. So
there's no right answer. And that's the problem is, it's, you either have to have none, or you have to let it have it all. There's no in between, because you're just always going to have people who are going to cheat or find a way around it, or, find a loophole. Yeah. And so...
Well, as long as the Fisk girls are taken care of, that is all we care about.
Well, we're working on building their brand so that they can then get more NIL deals. Some of them have them. Some of them have a few. The incoming freshmen, obviously, they're not, but we want to teach them how to build their brand, because we can't actually get NIL deals. Like I as a coach cannot go out and advocate for them, but I can help them
build their brand, so
learn how to
the deals.
Make themselves more marketable, and how to find that market, and then doing things like this and interviews to say, hey, if you're interested, you can contact them.
Yeah. For sure. Well, I'm excited for the Fisk girls to continue paving the way, which leads to my next question. Black women account for nearly 10% of the scholarship athletes at NCAA Division I level, an increase from 7% in 2012. More than 10% of the USA Gymnastics members self-identify as Black. So talk about your journey to get more diversity in gymnastics.
Well, I'm speaking a lot. At the end of this week, I'm actually going to be speaking at a regional convention for gymnastics, and this topic is diversity, basically DEI, but and just kind of gymnastics for minorities, specifically for Black gymnasts. There's a lot of stereotypes, and so we have to get rid of those stereotypes. And we have to get people to understand that, gymnastics is about perfection, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's striving for perfection at 10-0. When you're in club level in Olympics, don't ask me what the number is. I've been in this sport forever, and I still don't really grasp when I'm looking at a score and seeing a 13, and everyone's like, oh, that's a great score. And I'm like, all right, if you say so. But it is what it is. But, and, lines are everything and that kind of thing. But it's not always possible. Because if you're going to accept all body types, you have to then have some leeway for it. Doesn't mean that you just say, oh, because they're Black and they have a sway back, I'm not going to take a deduction. You do. But it doesn't need to be as severe as maybe you would, because you're comparing them to somebody that is, built like a stick.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, they don't have to try hard to find that line.
That is not a traditional body type for a Black woman. So when she says stereotypes, that's what she means.
Yes.
Yes. It's different body types, but different athleticism, as far as body form. Being judged, and so that's the hard part too. But I love that you guys did the Fisk clinic this summer. My husband's cousin brought her daughter. They just moved to Middle Tennessee, and she was a part of to the camp, and she loved it. She just moved from Memphis, and she's a little Black girl, so excited to be trained by college athletes who are Black women excelling in gymnastics. So I think that's an incredible thing. So I have to give you your flowers there for setting all that up and getting your girls out there, because they are inspiring people for sure.
I tell this story when we first started working out. I don't want to say it's maybe one of the second weekends. We had gone up to a gym up in Clarksville on Saturdays. We would go up there and we were practicing, and there was this woman standing there, this Black woman, and she's just watching us. And I look over and she had tears in her eyes, and I was like, so I went over and talked to her. I'm like, hi, how are you?
It makes me teary.
I'm Coach Tarver. And I know, and I get teary every time I tell this story, but she looked at me, she said, thank you. And I said, well, thank you so much for that. And I said, and she goes, my daughter, who she was showing, her daughter was kind of flipping around there. She goes, she was ready to quit.
Yeah.
And she just walked up to me and said, Mommy, they look like me.
Yeah. And that gives me chills. Yeah. To know that you're not alone.
And she said, I can do this, Mommy.
Yeah.
I want to be like them. I want to go to Fisk one day. I don't want to quit anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, those weren't the exact words, obviously, but, paraphrasing a little bit. But the fact that she said, Mommy, they look like me.
Yeah.
And I just brought my whole team over. I stopped practice. I was like, everybody stop practice, come over. And I brought the little girl over and introduced her to the team, and I had the whole team meet her and talk to her mom, and it was amazing to see this little girl's smile was just, and I think she was maybe 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
And her smile was so big, and she, took pictures with them, and her mom just was standing back there with tears in her eyes.
Yeah. You guys are doing the work. You're making it happen. You are hitting the floor running seriously with this program, and I think it's remarkable. I do want to ask you, you hold a Juris Doctorate from New York Law School, so you have a law degree, and you are a gymnastics coach, and I keep you literally are wearing all these hats, but I'm just curious to know your thoughts on how important it is for athletes to continue their education. I know we're seeing a lot of NBA players that went to the NBA, but then they're going back and getting their education. And then even when I interviewed Rand, the Titans GM, he went to the NFL and then he went back to go get his degree. So I'm curious to know your stance on athletes finishing their education or even continuing their education and getting higher education degrees.
Well, the thing is, I say number one, you got to know what they know. I mean, how do you sit in a boardroom with people if you don't know what they know?
Right.
You have to have at least the knowledge to be able to counteract anything they're throwing at you.
Yeah.
But honestly, it depends on what you want to do. Yeah. I mean, I think education is obviously very important, but I also believe that you should do what you're calling and your passion. I know people who are plumbers who make more money than people who have college degrees.
Absolutely. Trades. Yeah.
So if a trade is what works for you, then do it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it right. Do it passionately. Walk into any job you do and give 100%. Don't do it halfway. Don't cut corners. So for me, education is important depending on what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
I don't advocate someone getting into debt for a 4-year degree if they want to do something they don't need a 4-year degree for.
Absolutely.
I don't feel the need for them to get that debt just to have that piece of paper if it's not necessary. Now, obviously, if you want to be an accountant, you're going to have to go to college.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to college, go ahead and get your master's so that you're have something up on all the other accountants that you're working with.
Right.
So I do believe, you know what I mean? It's kind of a...
Yeah, I believe that education, the first statement that you made, is definitely going to help you, because when you know what they know, you can have a seat at the table and advocate for yourself and everybody else. And in your case, making history because you're torch bearing and you were talking about doing these speaking engagements, and you know these things. You know more than just the athleticism side. Right. You also know the logistics and what you're up against. So I did read something that was pretty interesting. Even as the number of black and brown athletes rises, diversity among coaching, club ownership, judging, and representation at the top levels of USA Gymnastics remains very much so a work in progress. While more than half of the athletes at the Olympic trials were women of color, the overwhelming majority of the coaches and the judges on the floor were white. And so I'm wondering how this affects the competition element of gymnastics. And I know we just touched on it a little bit based off of like how they're being judged with body types and that sort of thing. But how is this affecting competition in your opinion, with it not having as much diversity on that side?
It is a problem. It's something that needs to get rectified. I don't think there's a single black judge, FIG judge, which is Federation of International Gymnastics, which is a level that can judge at the Olympics. Okay. There's not a single black FIG judge in the United States right now.
Wow.
There used to be, but there's no longer one. And that's a problem. If you looked at the national championships last year, the top 3 on the award stand were black athletes. And coaching, you don't have that diversity. Coaching's a little different because honestly, any coach can train an Olympic level gymnast if they have someone that is that capability. So it's not a requirement that you have to be a certain thing or get a certain education or go a certain direction in order to coach that level of athlete. You have to just have the athlete and have a knowledge and be able to bring the athlete to that level. Yeah. So coaching wise, it's not as hard of I guess you could say it's a different path. There's not as much restrictions, I don't think. But it's hard to find that athlete. Don't get me wrong. They're one out of every 1,000 athletes you may ever meet are going to be the kind of athlete that can go to the Olympics. And they tend to, when they get good enough, they tend to go to a gym in which is already proven track record. Yeah. And that's kind of how it happens. Yeah. Every once in a while you'll get, an outlier. But generally speaking, they're at gyms that are kind of established or programs that have established. Judging, though, you have to be invited to be a FIG judge. It's invitation only. So it's up to USA Gymnastics to do something about that. Yeah. And USA Gymnastics has been through a lot in the past few years. And they're the head of USA Gymnastics is a person of color because she's Asian. Yeah. So it's coming. Yes, but I mean, again, in order to make that change, it has to come from the top. It has to be USA Gymnastics has to say, we're going to actively go out and try to find black judges. And they're available. You're available. I'm actually, from what I understand, I do qualify. Yeah. But I didn't get the invitation this past year. Yeah. Well, this past cycle. It's coming for you, and so much more is coming for you. I wish it had happened, but I'm not upset that it didn't this cycle, mainly because if I was trying to do that along with start a gymnastics program and be the athletic director, and you're a mom and a wife, I definitely and all of that, would not have made that. That would not have happened. I could not have put anything else on that plate. Yeah. But as more black athletes break into the space, it's definitely necessary to have. It's very necessary. Yeah. It is extremely necessary. And a lot of education has to happen for the judges and for the coaches, because a lot of my gymnasts were the only black gymnasts on their team. So you have to understand when you say something, how that can affect a young black woman. Things like, I was told I didn't have the right body type to make the Olympics because I had a butt. I was not a stick figure. Now, did it bother me? No, because the Olympics weren't my goal. But if it'd been my goal, that would have crushed me.
Yeah, for sure.
To be told you don't have a shot. Basically, you're saying no matter how talented I am, because of the way I look, you're not going to let me on that team.
Because of my curves. Yeah. And
And
that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is. And it's still a pill that many people still say to these Black athletes and these young gymnasts. And sometimes they'll say to an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, well, guess what? We're going to lose them to basketball or volleyball or field hockey or lacrosse or soccer or, these other sports or track because you've
counted them out.
You've already basically told them they had absolutely no chance of ever being fully successful.
Yeah. But you also give lots of hope because you have been able to continue a career. You've become successful academically. You have become successful career-wise. And I admire you for trailblazing in all these areas. And I'm just honored to know that you're a soror. And I'm honored to even have you sit down here today. And I just have one last question for you.
Okay.
What's next for you after this? Where else do you want to go? What's
I can't even think that far ahead. Yeah? Honestly, I can't think that far ahead. Right now, my focus is going to be on this team and building this program up. But I do want to be a part. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. What immediate thing is speaking circuit. I enjoy speaking. Yeah. And I think that this message needs to get out.
Yeah.
And I'm in a unique position to get it out there.
Well, I'm going to help you get it out.
So I'm trying to get a TED Talk. So if you have any connections there, give me, let me know.
Yeah.
But I'm also working. I want to hopefully work with USA Gymnastics down the road to have initiatives and to have, whether it's committees or some kind of programs to help bring in more Black judges, more Black coaches, things of that nature, because we have that coaching on a collegiate level about like helping coaches get administrators or bringing more Black coaches into college coaching. Right. But there's nothing in the grassroots. And I also want to, I want to bring more HBCUs. Yeah. I think right now it's hard. We have a second HBCU that was added, Talladega.
Yeah,
so that's exciting.
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
Congratulations.
But it makes it hard though because there, like you said, there's only like 10% of the athletes are Black athletes. So it's like we're pulling from the same pool, which then means that we're diluting right now. So it works now. Right now we're good. Yeah. But if there's too many too fast,
the talent is going to be hard to find.
Well, what's going to end up happening is it's going to end up being white athletes going to PWIs, which if you look at other sports, that's what they have. If you look at softball at PWIs, I mean, not PWIs, sorry, softballs at HBCUs, you'll white. See that it's almost 50% white, if not, if you look at bowling at HBCUs, some of those programs are almost all white. So, and it's not that I would not let I want any athlete that wants to come to Fisk. I'm not going to limit it.
But you want to also be a foundation for launching Black women into gymnastics.
Exactly. And give them opportunities that they weren't getting.
Yeah. Otherwise,
for some,
because that is why historically Black colleges and universities were founded anyways.
Right.
Is to give us a space, same way with Black sororities and fraternities, to give us a home. And so you want to be home.
Yes.
Yes.
So we need to be strategic in how we do this because we need to build up more athletes. We need to build up more coaches, build up more judges, keep the athletes
build up more programs.
Well, before we can do the programs, before they can be supported by the Black athletes, it has to come from the grassroots. So we need to add. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to do everything I can to add, but we have to be strategic in how we do it.
Absolutely.
So that we're not.
You're leading the charge.
I haven't been up to this point, but I am excited after I have my year under my belt to be able to start going out there and advocating and maybe talking to some of these other programs, because I do have a lot of friends that are athletic directors at HBCUs. Like I said, I did 10 years of athletic administration. So we all started out as like assistant athletic directors together. Now they're ADs. Yeah. So now that I have a year under last year was hard to really go out there because I had no idea what I was getting myself into per se. Yeah. I didn't know what I was going to get. I mean, I hoped what I was going to get, but now that I know and I can have that conversations, I can now sit down with them and say, okay, this is the benefits. This is where you can, can grow. This is what we can do. So
yeah. For sure. Well, I am excited to see what Fisk does this year. I'm excited to see what you do, more speaking engagements and more building, grassroots building to get more diversity in the sport, just all of it. I'm excited for you. And I'm so grateful that you stopped by the Sweet House to share all of that with us. You guys look out for Fisk and Corrine this season, starting, when does the season start?
We start in January. We have 4 home meets.
Okay.
And our first home meet will be January 15th.
Okay.
And it is going to be on MLK Day. And it will be every single Black female head coach in the country will be on the floor at the same time for the first time.
Where is that one going to be?
It's going to be here in Nashville.
Is it going to be at Belmont again, or?
Right now, I'm pretty sure it's going to be at Bandy.
Okay. All right. January 15th, MLK Day. History is being made on MLK Day here in Nashville. So we will see you there.